Hey guys, we're excited for the gathering on March 3rd. We're gonna do something special this time and go to the Wild Game in Longmont. Just bring $15 and that gets you 2 slices of pizza, a drink, and unlimited arcade games from 6:30 to 8. If you want any extra food while we're there, make sure you bring extra cash.
Hey, what's going on, Rocky students? I hope you are doing well. Hey, my name is Billy Bonfield. I'm one of the student pastors. I am at the Frederick campus. So we are jumping into week 2 of our series on identity. And last week, Tanise killed it. And I think she did a great job. So if you see her, give her a high five and a hug and tell her how awesome that was, because it was great. So we are jumping into Ephesians chapter 1, verses 3 through 14. And one of the things that we are talking about, we're talking about 4 specific words, an acronym that we're calling CARS. So in that passage, we are pulling out 4 specific words that represent who we are in Jesus and our identity and what we get to expect in Him. And the first one was chosen. You are chosen. And Tanise touched a lot about this on this. And if you've not seen that video, you need to go back and watch it because it was awesome. So she chatted about being chosen and how God has chosen us. And so tonight we're getting to chat about, and I get to teach on one specific word. It's called adoption. Adoption. And for me specifically, growing up, I think I have a really unique story when it comes to adoption. And I get to teach on this, and I was actually super excited about it because I get to share this story with you. So around the age of 14, my parents sat my sister and myself down, and they said, hey, would you be interested, like how would you feel if we became a foster family? And backtracking a little bit, my dad at the age of 1 was adopted by a family. So this is kind of near and dear to his heart. And so for those of you who are not familiar with foster care or what it looks like, foster care is when families bring in kids whose parents cannot take care of them, or their parents have been unfit by the court system to not be able to be their guardians or whatever. So they stay with a family until either their parents can figure out life and get them back, or they'll go on to be adopted. And so one of the things that my parents had always been open to was the idea of adoption, because they would love to adopt a little boy. So at the age of 14, my parents sat us down. I had 5 sisters growing up, so they really wanted another little boy. And so they sat us down and we said, yeah, that sounds cool. My sister and I were the only ones in the house. So we're like, yeah, it'd be cool to have more siblings or whatever. And so my parents went through the process, and it's a really intensive process, and they have to do all this stuff and be a part of all these groups, and like it's crazy. Like they have to keep knives up in a cabinet like that's locked. It's just like, it's a lot. And so my parents went through the process, and then my parents got their first 2 kids. And I remember exactly their names, and I remember who they were, I remember what they looked like. I remember everything about them. I remember how long they were there with us. And I remember my parents over the next 4-ish years had almost 100 kids in their home. Almost 100 kids whose parents couldn't take care of them, or they're unworthy or unfit to parent them or be their guardians anymore. So my parents stepped in. And at the age of 17, I was getting ready to go off to college. It was the summer before I went off to college. My parents got a call about 2 little boys. One was just a couple months old. The other one was 11 months old. And they were biological brothers. That means they have the same mom and same dad. And they brought them into their home. And their names was Damien and Jordan. And I remember these boys super specific. I remember exactly what they were wearing, what they looked like. And quickly after they were brought into our home, the court system decided that they would not be their parents any longer. So in my parents' eyes, they were like, this is awesome. Like, we want to adopt these 2 little boys because we fell in love with them so quickly. So my parents got 2 for 1. They wanted to adopt a little boy, and they got 2. Up in my first month at Ozark Christian College, which is just south of Kansas City, my parents started to go through the process of adopting these 2 little boys. About a month in, I drove back up to Kansas City to attend the court hearing for the adoption of my 2 little brothers. And so my parents went to the court, and the judge signed the paper and said, all right, these boys are now officially Bonfields. And when they became Bonfields, we changed their names. Because there's something really biblical about when you become part of something or something happens to you, your name changes. So we changed their names to Joshua and Caleb. Well, we bring them into our family and they become Bonfields and they are part of our family, right? When you live in life and all this stuff. Well, a couple of years later, my mom gets a phone call from the state of Kansas, like the foster care in Kansas. And they call her and they say, hey, there's another brother. There's another brother. Do you want him? And my mom's super emotional because she's upset with the parents. Like, how could you do this again? You're not going to be able to take care of him and all this stuff. And she calls my dad crying. And my dad, I remember his response so vividly. I remember it. He just says, how could we not take him? How could we not? So that day, my mom and dad, they drove up to the hospital and they picked up Daniel James Bonfield. And when I tell people I have a big family, I have 5 sisters and I have 3 brothers, I don't go into the fact that my brothers have been adopted because they are part of our family. They are part, when we adopted them, we did not see them differently. They are Bonfields. And that means that they get the same rights as the boy in the family, as the sisters, as blood in the family. They are part of our family. And the reason I get really excited about this because I've seen what it's firsthand is like in my own life to love someone who's not your blood. Like, I truly love those boys. I love them. They were just out for Christmas and I had a blast being around them. And I couldn't imagine life without them. And I think this is a perfect and beautiful depiction of what Jesus and what God and how they bring us into the family. When we make a public display, like a public confession that we believe in Jesus and we've accepted him and we live life according to him, we get brought into the family. And because we are a part of the family, we get certain rights. We get an inheritance as a part of being in the family. In the same way as me, the oldest brother, has certain rights, my adopted brothers will always have those same rights because they are a part of our family. I think it's true for us. When we are brought into the family of God and we are adopted, we have rights. We have an inheritance that we get. And the inheritance is salvation, it's redemption, it's hope, it's all these really churchy words. But those are the things that we get when we come into the family. And so as it's one of those things where it's hard to go, okay, how do we apply this in our lives? How do we apply it? How do you apply the word adoption to your life, which I think is a tough thing? But here's my encouragement. As we get ready to break up into groups, I think you should ask the question, if you are a believer in Jesus, this is a big if you are a believer in Jesus and you've made a public confession that, yes, I follow Jesus. If you've made that confession and you are not living like a son and daughter of the King, of God, what things do you need to do to live like that? So when you pray, do you pray with expectancy that God is going to do what he says he's going to do, the promises that he says? Do you believe that he's going to bring all things to his glory? Do you believe these things? These are the things that I think that we get to do. These are the things that we get to expect because we're part of the family. But if you are not a believer in Jesus, and you want to be a part of the family, and you want to be brought in, you want to be adopted, and you want all the promises, my challenge and encouragement to you would be go have those conversations with your small group leaders. Because I think it's really important for us to realize that when we are a part of the family, and we get to be a part, and we're adopted into it. We're inheritance to the King. We're inheritance to the throne. And the same way, I hope it's many years from now, if my father passes away, when he will, and my brothers and I are sitting down and we're talking about the things how it's going to break up and all this stuff, they get just as much as I do. And you get just as much as being a part of the family of God. So my encouragement to you would be, if you are a believer, walk with expectancy, walk like you're a son and daughter of the King. And if you're not and you want to be a part of that, I challenge you to go have a conversation what it looks like to be adopted into the family of God with your small group leader. We're going to go ahead and break up into our small groups, and we'll see you next week.